Welcome back, everybody. These are the best horror films of 1983. We're moving along now, and we've already covered cannibal movies of 80. 81 started the whole stream of slasher films. 82 had its share of slasher films and alien films. Now let's see what 1983 has in store for the horror genre. These are the best, all the movies included. These are the best horror films of 1983 that were released worldwide, cable TV, movie theaters, drive-ins, you name it. These are all the horror films, the best horror films that were released. And there's some duds, there's some comedy ones, some corny, cheesy ones, but these are all the horror films that were released in 1983. Now, my list may not be all-inclusive, but to me it is. So let's check out the best horror films of 1983. The Gold of Love. Young Patricia wanders through a Viennese night full of lust for love, visions of drugs and violence, gleaming frenzy in dark alleys, horror, music, and mystery. The Gold of Love. Das Gold der Liebe. A blade in the dark. A killer stalks a composer staying at a posh Tuscany villa while writing the score to a horror film, which has an incriminating clue to the killer's identity. Slasher horror. We love slasher horrors. A Night to Dismember. Slasher horror. A woman from a cursed family is released from a mental facility, and soon dismembered corpses start turning up. We love it. A Night to Dismember. The Alchemist. A man seeks revenge on an evil magician who placed a curse on him. The Alchemist. I'm going to put a curse on you. That's what it's about. With John Sandiford and Robert Ginty. The Alchemist. American Nightmare. Slasher horror. A man investigates the disappearance of his sister with the help of a roommate. He uncovers a trail of prostitution, hookers, sluts, incest, blackmail, and murder. Amityville 3D. Inquisitive Reveal magazine journalist John Baxter moves into the Amityville house in defiance of the supernatural events connected to it and finds everyone around him besieged by evil manifestations. Angst. A troubled man gets released from prison and starts taking out his sadistic fantasies on an unsuspecting family living in a secluded house. Angst. Drama, horror, and thriller. The Beast and the Magic Sword. In the 16th century, Dynasty travels from his naive Europe to Japan, seeking a way to cure himself of being a werewolf. Only a Japanese sorcerer named Kian can save him. Bloodbeat. Slasher horror. A young woman accompanies her boyfriend to his family's rural Wisconsin home for Christmas, where the spirit of a Japanese samurai begins wreaking havoc on them. Bloodbeat. Boogeyman 2. Slasher horror. Lacey travels to Hollywood to the home of a film director where she brings along the last surviving haunted mirror shard from the end of the first movie as proof to her horrifying experiences. Cannibal Mercenary. A Thai veteran of the Vietnam War and all-around master of combat leads a group of men on a daring mission into the jungles of Vietnam to topple a dangerous drug lord and his cannibal army. Carne de tu carne, meat of your meat. When grandmother dies, a girl returns to Colombia from the U.S. and is reunited with her half-brother. They are instantly attracted to each other and have delirious visions of ancestors and incest. Christine. We love Christine. A nerdish boy buys a strange car with an evil mind of its own, and his nature starts to change to reflect it. Maybe you should get a life of your own before it's too late. Christine will not disappoint. City of Blood. A medical examiner investigating a series of prostitute murders discovers that the culprit is an ancient tribal witch doctor come back to life. City of Blood. Cujo. Everybody knows Cujo. Cujo, a friendly St. Bernard contracts rabies and conducts a reign of terror on a small American town. Cujo. Anyone who has a pet, and when the dog starts barking or being evil, we call him Cujo. Curtains. We love curtains. Slasher horror. 6 young actresses auditioning for a movie role at a remote mansion are targeted by a mysterious masked murderer. Again, see? A group of people, 6 young actresses. I love it. Dance of the Dwarves. An anthropologist hires a down-on-his-luck helicopter pilot to fly her into the jungle, where she is searching for a scientist who is investigating reports of a tribe of reptile men. Dance of the Dwarves. The Lift. A lift technician finds himself drawn into a web of mystery and peril as he investigates the perplexing deadly accidents occurring in the elevators of a new office building. The Lift. Horror mystery. Deadly Lessons. A psycho is stalking the students at an exclusive girls' school. Again, campus schools, college dormitories, sororities. This psycho is stalking a bunch of kids. Le Démon dans l'île. On an island, things start going crazy as the island's household appliances go rogue. It's up to Dr. Grable to discover what's causing this evil and much more. So appliances are killing people. The Demon Murder Case. A young boy is taken over by demons who force him to commit murder. The Demon Murder Case. Charles Fields, Leanne Langland, and Joyce Van Patten. The Demons of Ludlow. A murderous demon lurks inside an antique piano in a picturesque coastal town. The Demons of Ludlow. Horror. This movie is creepy but fun to watch. Disciples of the Crow. A couple passing through a small Oklahoma town discover that it has been taken over by a homicidal cult that worships a crow god, and that all the cult members are children. Disciples of the Crow. Disconnected. Slasher horror. I love the names of these movies. Alicia has started getting these very noisy and disturbing phone calls. The question is, are they real or is it all in her head? Disconnected. Extraterrestrial Visitors. A young boy in the woods discovers a lovable alien. Or is it? Extraterrestrial Visitors. Featuring a lovable alien. Check it out. Eyes of Fire. A preacher is accused of adultery, and he and his followers are chased out of town. They become stranded in an isolated forest which is haunted by the spirits of French colonists controlled by evil. Frightmare. When his loyal fans decide to steal his fresh corpse from the mortuary to party with it all night long, a true horror film star returns from the grave as a ghastly bloodsucker bent on revenge. Frightmare. Grizzly 2. Revenge. All hell breaks loose when a giant grizzly, reacting to the slaughter of grizzlies by poachers, attacks at a massive big band rock concert in National Park. Halloween 3. Season of the Witch. One of the best movies of the Halloween franchise. Kids all over America want silver shamrock masks for Halloween. Dr. Daniel Chalice seeks to uncover a plot by Silver Shamrock owner Colonel Cochran. House of the Long Shadows. An American author finds a dilapidated Welsh manor perfect for writing until the residents host a bizarre family reunion. Dark comedy, and horror. Hysterical. A burned-out writer retreats to a northwest town called Hellview to write the great American novel. Unfortunately for him, the lighthouse he is renting is haunted. Parody, comedy, and horror. Hysterical. Please don't eat the babies. Teenage girls are kidnapped and brought to a remote island, which is inhabited by a family of crazed killers. Action and horror. Please don't eat the babies. Jaws 3D, one of the best horror films of all time. Jaws 3D. A giant 35-foot shark becomes trapped in a SeaWorld theme park, and it's up to the Sons of Police Chief Brody to rescue everyone. Jaws 3D blows away the original Jaws, in my opinion. Just joking. The Keep. Nazis are forced to turn to a Jewish historian for help in battling the ancient demon they have inadvertently freed from its prison. So now the Nazis need the Jews for help. Ogroff. Slasher horror. A masked lumberjack stalks anyone who enters his woods. Throughout the film, we get a variety of people who come in contact with the killer, and they don't live to regret it. Mausoleum. 10-year-old Susan Walker, mourning her mother's death, is possessed by a demon who has been preying on her female ancestors for centuries. Fantasy horror. Mausoleum. This movie is creepy but good. Microwave Massacre. Fed up with his wife's bad cooking, Donald kills her and turns to cannibalism to satisfy his appetite. Dark comedy, parody, and slasher horror. Microwave Massacre. Mortuary. This movie is creepy and good. I love it. Slasher horror. Convinced that her father's death was not an accident, a beautiful girl decides to investigate and find out the truth, aided by her boyfriend. Slasher horror featuring Bill Paxton. Nightmares. Anthology of 4 horror tales with a supernatural twist based on urban legends. Nightmares. Horror and sci-fi. 1983 is a great year for horror films. Check them out. Of unknown origin. A man becomes destructively obsessed with killing a dangerous rat, which has taken residence in his recently renovated house. Of unknown origin, dark comedy, and horror. Panic Beats. A man moves his alien wife to his family's ancestral house for a period of recovery. Things are not what they seem to be when the wife becomes plagued with terrifying visions which begin to worsen her ailments. Play Dead. A rich elderly woman casts black magic spells on her vicious Rottweiler to murder her relatives. So this is going to be a Rottweiler killing people. Play Dead. Possibly in Michigan. 2 women are chased through a shopping mall by a stalker named Arthur. Possibly in Michigan. Horror musical. This movie is good, campy, and scary. Sweet 16 is awesome. Slasher horror. Teenager Melissa moves into a small town filled with racial prejudice and bullying, and each time she meets up with one of the boys in town, they end up murdered. But who is the killer? Sweet 16. I love it. The Final Terror. Slasher horror. See the pattern? A group of rangers go camping on an unfamiliar forest grounds. All's well until the group members start getting killed by a cunning killer in the woods. The Final Terror. I see a group of kids. Spaceship. A far satirizing extraterrestrial horror movies such as Alien. Alternate title includes The Creature Wasn't Nice and Naked Space. Re-released in 1999. Spaceship. Psycho 2. After 22 years of psychiatric care, Norman Bates attempts to return to a life of solitude, but the specters of his crimes and his mother continue to haunt him, featuring Robert Loggia, Meg Tilly, and Dennis Franz. Revenge of the Dead. Stefano, a young journalist, buys a used typewriter and accidentally sees that some text is still readable on the ribbon. He manages to reconstruct the story of a scientist, Paolo Zedar. Scalps. Slasher horror. A group of archaeological students venture on Indian land for a dig. Unfortunately, they release an evil spirit who possesses one of them and starts killing the others. I love it. Seeding of a Ghost. A Hong Kong taxi driver's life horribly falls apart after accidentally hitting a sorcerer with his cab. He decides to seek the sorcerer's help to turn the curse on his enemies at the expense of his own life. Skullduggery. An 80s classic where a game of Dungeons and Dragons is the centerpiece of mystery. Adam is a man who happens to come from a long line of men cursed. Skullduggery. Sledgehammer. Slasher horror. A young boy murders his mother and her lover with a hammer. 10 years later, a wave of teenage murders plague the same area. Slasher horror, Sledgehammer. Sleepaway Camp, ripping off Friday the 13th. Bunks and showers are a mad stabber's beat at a summer camp strictly for teens. Sleepaway Camp was trying to capitalize on Jason Voorhees. Soul Survivor. A lone survivor of a plane crash is haunted by a feeling unworthy of survival. Dead people start coming after her to collect her. Soul Survivor. Horror and thriller and sci-fi. This movie is really good. Something wicked this way comes. It's unnerving. In a small American town, a diabolical circus and its demonic proprietor prey on the townsfolk. Something wicked this way comes. Spasms. A gigantic serpent is captured on a remote island and shipped to an American college for experimentation. A British millionaire and an American scientist must pursue the beast when it escapes. Strange Invaders. Alien beings who settle in a small Midwestern town are disturbed by a young professor determined to rescue his daughter from their clutches. Strange Invaders. Suffer, little children. A mute child arrives at a children's home and starts terrorizing the other children with her demonic powers. Suffer, little children. Next up we have is The Black Spider. This film is about a black spider that symbolizes evil works, well, when focusing on the 19th century story by Jerome Goffin. The Black Spider, horror and mystery. Again, we have another film poster for The Demon Murder Case. A young boy is taken over by demons who force him to commit murder. This stars Cloris Leachman, Kevin Bacon, and Joyce Van Patten, and Andy Griffith. The House. The old house acquired by Bjorg and her husband Petur slowly takes on a menacing proportions once Bjorg is left alone for a few days. Drama, horror, and mystery. The Last Night. Two psychos escape from the maximum security wing of Broadmoor Prison and sneak into the back door of a theater to hide away performance of a stage play titled Murder in the Dark. The Last Night. The Phantom of the Opera. The Budapest Opera House's diva commits suicide after the owner ruins her career for having rejected his advances. The Phantom of the Opera. Drama and horror. The Sins of Dorian Gray. A young woman sells her soul for eternal youth and beauty, while her screen tests grow elderly and depraved to behold. The Sins of Dorian Gray. The Trail, or Juihua Cha Huang. A gang of opium smugglers disguised as Taoist priests transporting hopping corpses are hired to transport a real dead body to its final resting place. The Dead Zone is a scorcher. A man awakens from a coma to discover he has psychic ability to foresee future events. The Dead Zone will not disappoint. Next up we have is The Deadly Swarm. Alien creatures invade a small town and 4 teenagers along with a young boy attempt to escape from them. Alien invasion, horror. The Deadly Spawn. The Devonsville Terror. Dr. Worley probes a witch's curse in Devonsville after 3 women arrive, angering misogynistic leaders. The Devonsville Terror. Horror with Donald Pleasance from Halloween. The Hunger. A love triangle develops between a beautiful yet dangerous vampire, her cellist companion, and a gerontologist. Featuring Susan Sarandon, Cliff DeYoung, and David Bowie. The Passing. 2 elderly World War II buddies are living and dying together in their small home. One becomes a patient where salvage-worthy older attributes are combined with usable younger body parts. Horror sci-fi. The Twilight Zone, the movie. 4 horror and science fiction segments directed by 4 famous directors, each of them being a new version of a classic story from Rod Serling's landmark television series. Mick Morrow was sadly killed in the filming. Videodrome, a programmer at a Toronto TV station that specializes in adult entertainment, searches for the producers of a dangerous and bizarre broadcast. Videodrome, cyber thriller horror. Those were the best horror films that came out in 1983. Those were all the horror films that were released in 1983. Now, obviously, my list is not all-inclusive, but I try to make them all-inclusive. There may be a foreign film here and there that I didn't cover, either because I couldn't pronounce the name or the plot sucked. But pretty much, I would say 99.9% of the films I offer you here, those are all the films that were released of that year and that decade. So what were your favorite films of 1983? I love Friday the 13th. Every Friday the 13th film I love. I love Jaws 3D. What other ones were there? Let's see. Twilight Zone, the movie, that was good, but very sad because, Mick Morrow and the 2 kids died in that filming. But 1983 was a great year. Again, heavy into the slasher type of genre in the horror film genre. And a couple of alien type films that were released then. But mostly now, what's the central part of horror are the slasher horror films. Because people gravitate to that. People like seeing people stabbed and groups of kids, stupid kids, stabbed. Again, remember the summer camp, blood massacre, whatever, sleepaway camp? So you have all these camp people dying, group of kids dying, teenagers dying, college co-eds, you name it. That's why we love horror films. What were your favorite horror films of 1983? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Tony. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the best horror films of 1984. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you folks real soon.